is Tuesday, and you know what that means. It's time for all of you to claim your seat right here with me at the table. And I am so excited for our show today. But before we get to that, I want to thank our sponsor, Daily Pay. Got their logo up there. Daily Pay is such a phenomenal partner. And for all of you who are in a leadership position, if you're a CEO, a COO, in human resources, in any sort of leadership role, and you're looking for new, innovative ways to attract talent, to retain talent, and to bolster your DE&I strategy, Daily Pay is a product I highly recommend you check out. Daily Pay allows any of your employees to access earned but unpaid wages at any time through a simple app on their phone with a very small transfer fee. There's no interest, there's no clawbacks. It's not one of those predatory payday loans. It truly allows people to access money they have earned and put it immediately into their account for whatever they might need. And it is truly game changing. So thank you, Daily Pay, for being here with us as a partner, as a sponsor. And I look forward to seeing all the great things you guys are launching in the next year. So now my guest today is someone who I have met through this phenomenal platform called LinkedIn. And we have become wonderful friends. And he is an author, a podcaster, a cancer survivor, a consultant, a community leader, a father, a husband. I'm sure I've left something out, but I am excited to welcome to the stage my friend, Andy Storch. Yay!
Hey, Barbie, what's up? You forgot one thing. Friend, most importantly.
Friend,
I am a friend, and I consider you my friend. Thank you so much for having me on.
I am so happy you're here. It's wonderful. Of course, it is International Women's Day, my friend.
That's right.
But you know what? You are such a huge advocate for women, both in your professional life and clearly your personal life with your beautiful children and your wife and all you guys have accomplished as a family and everything you've gone through. And, you know, I do consider you a friend. And the cool thing is Andy's over there in Orlando. I'm here in Tampa. We could meet easily, in Lakeland, and we found a park. Yes. Lakeland is a phenomenal town here in Central Florida, and it's where Publix is headquartered, and they have a lot of great parks and outside. So we're gonna meet up over there.
We're gonna make it happen.
We are gonna make it happen. So Andy launched his book, or released his book, I guess. Book launch, book release. What's been
Published,
a year?
Launched, released.
A year or so.
Choose your adverb. Yep.
Own your career, own your life, and I have 2 copies here.
Ooh.
Woo, woo, woo. I have one. Yes.
I do too.
Awesome. One that Andy was kind enough to inscribe for me, and one that I ordered because I was so excited about the book. So maybe we'll do some sort of giveaway. I don't know, Andy. We have to be creative. Maybe if we get some really great questions from the audience or some great comments, we'll choose someone. So. Sorry, I do see the comments, guys. Sorry, we did start a little bit earlier. So Yvonne, you were correct. We were just a minute or 2 late. So here we are. So hello, Diana. Thanks for being here. You are one of our favorite people as well.
Hey, Diana.
Andy, I want talk to me about what inspired you to write Own Your Career, Own Your Life. I mean, not only the title is just like, it's powerful because you really connect with exactly what's inside this book, but what inspired you to go here from the career you had, the work you were doing, and then the vision of where you wanted to go?
Yeah, well, thank you, Barbie. First of all, thank you again for having me on your show. I love everything you're doing. We connected on LinkedIn, like you said, a couple of years ago. I remember when I had you on my podcast.
Yes.
And that was pre-COVID life. A lot of things have changed since then. And we have remained friends and talked many times, phone, text, LinkedIn, you name it. And I always admire all the work that you're doing. So I'm honored to be here. And I do think we should talk about the fact that you're having this guy on International Women's Day. But to answer your question, I've been working in corporate consulting for about 10 years, had the opportunity to work with organizations, large companies, and travel all over the world running workshops and facilitating programs on leadership development, strategy, finance, business acumen, things like that. And along the way, I learned a lot about what success looks like, what leaders can do to be successful, what companies are doing to be successful. I looked a lot at culture and where people were happy and unhappy in the workplace. And I also observed a lot of people who were kind of drifting along in their careers, operating in reaction mode, waiting for other people to tell them what to do. They might be moving up the proverbial company ladder, the corporate ladder, but not always really that intentionally or really thinking through what they're doing with their career. And many of them didn't even necessarily seem that happy. These are the people that wake up at 50 or 60 and ask, what the heck just happened with the last 20 years of my career, right? So I kind of put that away in my head as I was figuring out things in my own career. And in 2016, I got really into personal development after I listened to a podcast and read a book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And started doing a lot of inner work, a lot of development on myself and reflecting and thinking about who I was and where I wanted to be, reading a lot of books, investing in masterminds and coaching and things like that, and discovered for me that I was really drawn towards the idea of entrepreneurship, that I wanted to run my own business. And so I started pursuing that and building out the brand and the business that I wanted. And I realized that there's an opportunity here as I'm designing my own career to help other people not only do that, but also to plan for the future, because things are changing all the time. And there are a lot of things that I've learned and done over the years that have helped set me up for success whenever, uncertainty comes, changes come, challenges pop up. And I wanted to find a way to share that with others. And the other important thing I'll throw in there too, as you and I have both had our own journeys towards entrepreneurship, which is something I think we both love doing. I've had many conversations with clients over the years who will say something like, it's great that you can do that. I would never want to be an entrepreneur, right? I have no interest in running my own business. I don't know how you do it, which is totally fine. My goal is not to convince other people to become entrepreneurs. My mission is to help inspire and help people become more intentional and more fulfilled in their careers, because I think that's at the end of the day, that's all people want, is to be happy and fulfilled in their career and feel like they're making a meaningful impact. And so that is what this book is all about. It's about helping you own your career and prepare for the future.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I connect with people who have kind of floated through their career, and it's not that they haven't worked hard. They've worked very hard.
No, of course. And we've all been there.
Whatever it is that they've been doing, they've put their all into it. But to your point, it was maybe not intentional. They kind of landed there. Maybe they were good at something, and so they got promoted. They got more and more responsibility. But then they step back and they're like, how the hell did I end up here? This wasn't, I went to school for X, or my passion is Y. And yet they've been doing this, administrative role or what have you. And I've heard a lot of people say that. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think, especially when we think generationally, right? Previous generations didn't ask a lot of questions. They were lucky and felt lucky to just get a job. They were pleased to have the ability to work. When we think about the silent generation and the baby boomers and the volatility that was happening in markets and in the job spaces at that time. So it was, you got a job and you just held on to it. And I think that still cascades down. I still talk to people today who are so afraid that if they lose their job, what will happen? I'm like, guys, this is the most competitive employee market we've ever seen. Yeah. What are you stressing about? Like, find what you want to do and then target companies and go after it. And that mentality of once you get a job, hold on to it forever is still really strong in some areas. And I also think we have to keep in mind there are geographies that may still not have caught up with this boom of the Great Resignation or whatever have you. When we think about areas like the Appalachians here in the U.S., and they were so dependent on mining and coal, and a lot of that has diminished over the years. So we have pockets where if they can't do remote work, there isn't anything for them. So we also have to be aware of that. So I love what you say. It's like, find what you love and then figure out a way to make that work for you for a career. So I think you're spot on with it. I love everything about what you've written in here.
Well, thank you. And there are a lot of cultural differences out there, right? Whether it's geographically, as you mentioned, industry wise. I did a lot of work in the tech industry. I used to live in San Francisco, and people are moving around already before this every 1 to 2 to 3 years, right? And then you work in the oil and gas industry, and people spend 30 years of their career with one company, and it's like unheard of to leave. And there's a really compelling reason to do it. And, there's no right or wrong answer there. But what I remind people of is that we're all on our own career journey, right? We're all on our own journey through our careers and through our life. And while you might be friends, and hopefully you have friends who do a lot of different things, the challenge I see is a lot of people get caught in comparison, and they're setting goals based on what they see other people doing. And you and I have probably been caught up in that as well,
Yes.
right? But you've got to live your life for you and set the goals for you. And if you're happy staying with a company for 30 years and you want that security and you value loyalty and it's working for you, like, that's great. This is not about you need to go change your job and all this stuff. But at the same time, if you're not fulfilled in your career, there's never been a better time. And it's never been easier to go find something else to figure out what else you want to do. But you've got to do the work to figure out what that is and where you want to go, and then find that best position and take action to go get it. And if that's the right move for you, then by all means, go do it. And, to like Diana's point earlier, it's not about becoming an entrepreneur, because, another reason I did this is I'd start listening to all these podcasts, and I hear this message in the entrepreneur space that people would say, like, if you're not happy with your job, you need to quit the 9 to 5 and go start your own business. And a lot of people are like, no, I don't want to do that. Right. So you don't need to do that. Find what works for you and what fits for you. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Learn from other people, but go, follow your own path.
I love that. And I've been reading Brene Brown's new book, Atlas of the Heart, and listening to it and reading it and consuming it in all these different ways. And one of the things, and you've heard this before, I've heard this before, but she's talking about different emotions and joy and that type of thing. And one of the things she brings up again, and it just really jumped out at me, is, comparison is the thief of joy. And we can easily get stuck in that, right? Like the grass always looks greener. And I've mentioned this before. I don't know if you and I talked about this, but there's a book called Stretch, and Sam Sonnenschein, and I have it on my shelf behind me. But in this book, he talks about there's scientific data that tells us when you peek over your fence and you look at your neighbor's grass, because of the curvature of the earth, which is very subtle, but visually our brain sees it differently, the grass literally does look greener to you from your vantage point.
Yeah.
But if you were to walk over there and look at the grass, you would realize that it's not. It looks exactly like your grass. But if you were on your neighbor's side of the yard and peered over the fence into your yard, the grass would look greener because of the vantage point and the way the light reflects and all this. Like, they go into a lot of detail.
Yeah.
But it was like this light bulb moment for me, because we're always, not we and not always, but people can often, let me not get sidetracked, right? But we compare ourselves to that person's career or that person's this. Thank you, Sam, Scotch Sonnenschein. I knew I'd get there.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous book. But we tend to always interpret what other people are doing as they must have it so easy. Or wouldn't it be nice if I could, as an entrepreneur, you get to make your own hours. As an entrepreneur, you can travel and write it off. All these things, right? And my friend who used to own her own business, she would joke because people would be like, oh, well, go, you can travel and work from anywhere. You can write it off. Well, but you still have to pay for it.
Right.
Like, it's not like free. So there's,
and if you go travel and stop working, you're not making any money, right? Because you're not out there bringing in clients. There's certainly trade-offs to it. And you and I were talking right before we started recording about these, influencers that we watch and observe and follow on LinkedIn and other social channels that, a lot of people don't realize followers does not equal income. You could be creating great content and a lot of people could be following you, but it doesn't mean that that's actually a business or you're able to pay your bills. A lot of people are really struggling because they haven't figured out what to do with that. And maybe they're not meant to be entrepreneurs, or maybe they're just not there yet. But entrepreneurship it's a challenge, it's a struggle, but I absolutely love it. And I would make less money doing this versus 3 times as much working for a company. But that's me. That's what because I've done so much self-reflection and inner work to really understand who I am and what drives me and what I love and design the life and the career that I want. that's how I know that is what works for me. But I also know that's not right for other people, right? And that's what I'm trying to encourage people is like, figure out who you are and what is right for you, and set a vision for where you want to go in your career, and then follow that path. And that's what a lot of people are just not doing.
They're not. And I think you really nailed it when you said, intentional, right? You have to be intentional. Diane, you make us laugh. Yes. We all see there's folks out there with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers, but is there really value, or is it vitriol? Is it just people being on a bandwagon? And if you're not converting that into sales, then I'm not sure what the purpose is, unless you're truly doing it just because you want to connect with people and build a community of followers, which is great.
Yeah.
But that doesn't equal entrepreneurship. They're very, very different. And I have to stress that to my children, because they're growing up. They're, almost 12. They're 9 and almost 12. So they've grown up in this world saturated with social media. How many social media outlets are there now, and YouTube? So you ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm hoping the answer is I want to be happy. But they'll say, I want to be an influencer. I want to, nice. I want to make money on YouTube. And I'll say, well, okay, let's start a YouTube channel. What do you want your channel to be about?
Yeah.
They don't know.
Right.
But there's this concept that you can just make videos and somehow money's going to flow in as a result. Right. And, you and I both know it doesn't quite work that way. Yeah. So you talk about building a plan, and I'm just looking at the back cover of your book because it's just an easy way to kind of go through. So your first bullet point is set a clear vision for your career, connect to your purpose, make a plan. So how do you help people to set that clear vision and understand, are they in the right place? Do they need to change? What is it that what does that visioning piece look like to you?
Right. Yeah. So the foundation there that it's not even on the back of the book, but the foundation is that self-awareness piece that we already talked about. And what I think is missing for so many people, and was missing for me for many years, is the lack of self-awareness of people taking the time. And it's very simple solution, right? Taking time to sit down with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and a journal for 30 or 60 minutes, uninterrupted, right, by kids or social media or anything else, quiet space, and just thinking about who you are, where you came from, how you got to where you are, what do you like about what you do, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Like, honestly, what are your strengths and weaknesses? What are your values? What are the things that you really enjoy doing? What do you love about your work? What do you not like about your work? And then you can use that as a base. And if you're willing, go get feedback from your friends, colleagues, people who are close to you, because they may know what your strengths and weaknesses are better than you do, right? And strengths even more so. A lot of times we don't realize what our strengths are because we just assume that if we're good at something, probably everybody is good at it. But we know that's not the case, right? Like if you're really good, like a lot of your friends are looking at you going, Barbie, you're so amazing at connecting people, at explaining things, at understanding culture. Like, I wish I could do things that way. And you don't even realize, right? So you have those strengths. Then you can use that as a foundation to start building your vision for where you want to go in the future. And your vision is, look 3, 5, 10 years out. Where do I want to get to in my career? Do I want to be vice president of HR one day? Do I want to be chief learning officer? Do I want to get into finance? Do I want to start my own business? Like, what is that vision for you? And that vision, and the importance of it is, the more clarity you have, the easier it is to make decisions when those challenging situations come along, when those opportunities come along, when a recruiter calls you. You work in finance and you decide you want to make a move into HR, because we all know HR is awesome, right? And that recruiter calls you and is like, we have this awesome position as a director of finance and we're going to give you a 50% raise. And you go, wow, that sounds nice, but my vision is actually to get into HR. So I'm going to hang with what I'm doing and make this move over here. But if you don't have that, then it's easy to get distracted, get pulled in different directions. And, I find myself agonizing over these decisions when I don't have that clarity of where I want to go. And I've faced those decisions as well. A couple of years ago, somebody offered me a really an influential person in our space, offered me a position within his company that would have been really cool, but it didn't fit within my vision for where I wanted to go. So I turned it down gracefully because it didn't fit in my vision. But if I didn't have that vision, it would have been a lot harder to deal with. And once you have that, then, as you mentioned, it's really important to start to make a plan for how you're going to get there. You think about a pilot getting in a cockpit of a plane. They don't start flying without knowing exactly where they want to go and how to get there, right? Same if we're driving a car. Usually we know exactly where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. And an important lesson that I learned throughout my career, going back to early in my life, when I would like set these visions or goals of like, I want to be, all the way back to when I was a kid, and my dream was to be a professional baseball player when I grew up. And I played baseball all the time, and it was like my favorite thing, baseball and football. But I went to practice, I went to the games, but I never went to my coach or my parents and asked for like extra mentorship or a tutor or like extra practice, or even like really said, this is my vision, can you help me? And, I got to 15 and I kind of dropped out. I didn't make it on the high school team. And I reflect back on that and tell that story because there's an important lesson in there, which is that a goal without a plan is really just a wish. And so you set this vision, you have this idea of this thing that you want to achieve, this place where you want to go. But unless you put a plan in place, and this is happening many times, it's hard to get there, right? So you've got to sit down and say, okay, I want to be VP of finance one day, or I want to change careers and move into HR. Well, how do I get there? What does that plan look like? Who do I need to know? What education or certifications do I need? What work experience do I need? Who can I talk to? Who can help me? And then look for ways to get help. Find a mentor, hire a coach, read some books, take an online course, talk to colleagues, network with people who have done it before, and find out like what you need to do to get there. And they can usually help you fast track it, but don't try to do it all on your own, right? Ask people for help. And that's going to help you get there a lot faster.
I agree. There's so much in that. So I would say there's a few things that just popped into my mind when we were talking. I love setting the plan, right? I want to be this. I want to do this. I want this title. And that's great. And most people say, I want to be VP of X, or I want to be the president of Y, whatever. And it's not because they're necessarily title hungry. I don't mean it like that. There's nothing wrong with saying I want to be the leader of X, Y, and Z. However, what popped into my head when you were saying that was an interview I did with Lindsay Pollack a few months ago about her book, Recalculating, right? And make sure you also give yourself permission to recalculate. Or if you think about that GPS, right, when you're talking about you have to know where you're going when you get in the car. But maybe there's a roadblock and you can't go the way you went. So your GPS is going to say recalculating and you're going to go a different way. So it's important to set the plan, to follow your plan, but then also take stock as you go and recognize that, to get to that goal, maybe I have to take a lateral move over here to learn more about X, Y, and Z. And then maybe I need to go over here so that eventually I'll get back over there. So it's not always a direct linear path to reaching whatever your goal is, and to give yourself that permission to also, when you reach that goal, to say, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I need a new plan. Because I can tell you, I wanted to be a CHRO for a really long time. That was a goal of mine. I wanted to get to that seat. And I can tell you, when you get there, it's lonely. It's isolating. You're carrying the weight of people's stories and people's lives, and you can't talk about it. It's all very confidential information. It's all very private. And so, yes, you can talk to your CEO about certain things, but there's a lot of information you can't even discuss with, the CEO or with a coworker or what have you. And it's a lot more isolating than people think it is. So it's also okay to say, okay, I got here. I don't want to stay here. There's no shame in that. And to
not what I thought it was going to be.
Not what I thought it was going to be. And it's okay. Totally, now let's come up with a new plan, right? But you're being intentional about it, and you're being thoughtful about it.
Things are going to change over time, of course, right? Like you said, you may not get that position that you wanted. You may get it, and it might turn out to be not exactly what you thought it was going to be. You may unexpectedly get laid off. You may get an opportunity that you just never saw coming. Your spouse might take a job in a different city, and you want to support them and go there. Like so many things can happen in life. And when I talk about this idea of setting a vision, it provides the clarity to help guide you and let you make a plan and start setting specific goals and taking action, because you need that target to be working towards. At least I do. I think a lot of people do. But you've got to be aware and ready for the idea that things are going to change. Like you said, Barbie, and things have definitely changed for me over the years. I know they've changed for you. I'm actually would be curious how your vision has changed over time, because you were climbing the ladder, you got to CHRO. I know things changed for you unexpectedly, and now you're building a business and a brand, in this spot instead of doing what you were doing before.
Yeah, I mean, my vision has changed so many times. When I was in junior high and high school and even college, I was a singer. I still am a singer, I guess. I still am. But
I forgot about that.
I studied voice for 23 years. I performed live at Notre Dame. I performed in front of tens of thousands of people. Like, I toured Europe with a vocal group.
It's amazing.
In my head, that was my life. That was my career. What I didn't anticipate is when I was done with the education part and the safety net of being able to go and do all this stuff, I had no plan for how do I get myself to New York, get an agent. Like, all of that part just intimidated the hell out of me because I and frankly, and Mom, I love you, but I didn't have a great support system.
Yeah.
I had the very hesitant, support parent folks who said, what's your plan B? You can't make a living as a musician. And so what is your plan B? Instead of the parents, because nobody has perfect parents. I don't think there's a perfect person on the planet. I adore my mother.
No.
She did the best she could in the
moment.
And
they do that. She did that out of love, right? She's worried about you failing. That's what parents do. We're so worried about our kids failing that we spend more time on the safety net than the dream.
Right. And so I didn't know. Now looking back, what's the craziest part about all of this, if I have a regret in life, and I don't live by regret, I don't believe in it, but I do have one thing I wish I had done differently, is I have family. Most of the Winterbottom side of my family lives 2 hours from New York City.
Oh.
I never connected the dots.
Yeah.
That I could have had a safety net.
Yeah.
And lived there and driven into the city for auditions. And I never did it because I didn't put it on paper. Like you said, I didn't create that personal board of directors who would have been able to give me the counsel to say, well, have you thought about this? You could have you could pursue it this way. I didn't have any of that. So now I know. And so now as I'm developing this business, I'm very intentional, as I'm sure you are, right? We text pretty frequently and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? Yeah. Or Sam Eaton, who I know is on here, Carla Looper, who I know is on here, Diana, Alex, all these people, Xander, hey, good to see you. These are all people I know and trust. And I will text them or email them and say, I have this, what are you thinking? Or am I off base? Or they'll give me feedback after shows too. They'll be like, hey, you didn't connect well there. Or you look disinterested. Right. And I'm like, well, that's feedback I didn't really want, but thanks for it. It's just one of those things where you have to have that kind of feedback to help redirect you when necessary and to make sure you stay connected to your purpose, because your purpose can be fulfilled in so many different ways. Yeah. Right? It is not a one and done, there's only one way to do it. And that's what I think is so amazing about the world we live in right now. Yep. Is that there's so many different ways to fulfill a purpose that may not have existed before. And I think you really help bring that out, is that it's not just an A, B, or C. There's multiple ways to do it. And you can do more than one thing. You're doing more than one thing. Totally. Right? You have a book, you coach people, you have a community, you facilitate mastermind sessions. Yeah. You consult, you're a keynote speaker, you're a father and a husband, and now you've gotten into this NFT space and Bitcoin, right? Does that go together? Bitcoin and NFT sort of? Yeah,
cryptocurrency, NFTs, all encompassed in what I'd call Web3, the blockchain.
Clearly, I understand none of it, but you're taking that leap into doing something else that you're driven to do, and so it takes courage to do that. But you're not going into it blindly, right? You did your research, you made a plan, you connected with people who are already in the space. So you're following your own advice, which is something we don't always do. And I
know, definitely. But I think about it all the time. Like, I think because I'm in this sphere of being a creator and building a personal brand and being publicly out there with a lot of stuff I do, my biggest fear is someone calling me out as a hypocrite or inauthentic or that sort of thing. So I try to live all the values that I espouse to other people. And, things don't go perfectly, but I pull upon my own teachings and lessons that I've learned right? To try to like model what it looks like to handle a lot of these things. And another thing that you were talking about there reminded me of, I have a chapter in my book about mindset and the importance of developing an ownership mindset and a growth mindset, which comes from the book Mindset, The New Psychology for Success by Dr. Carol Dweck from Stanford, a book that completely changed my life. And I realized that I grew up with a very fixed mindset, which is that if you're either good at something or you're not, right? If you try something and doesn't, and you're not good or doesn't work, it means you're not good at that thing and you should just go do something else, right? Versus having a growth mindset, which means we can always try things, we can always get better, we can always learn from our experiences. And so, you were sharing your regret about not pursuing singing more in New York. I shared earlier that I didn't make it as a baseball player. What actually happened was I was 15 years old. I got to high school and I didn't even try out for the high school team because I perceived that the high school team was too good and I wouldn't even make it. And so I didn't even try. And now me as an adult with a growth mindset is like cringing at my younger self because I'm like, why would I take myself out of the game? Why not at least try it and let them tell me that I'm not good enough? But I was too afraid to even go try out for the team. And I just quit baseball at 15. I quit football as well. And those are still like, regrets to this day. Like you said, no regrets. It's all part of my journey, got me to where I am today. And I'm happy with where I am today. But, we think back to these so-called regrets or mistakes or failures. And I think what's important is like, that stuff's going to happen. We all have them as long as we learn from them. And I've learned a lot from that experience, reflecting back on that. And we can figure out where we want to go and chart that path for ourselves and be willing to pivot and that sort of thing. And like you said, go find help, right? Everything I'm doing now, same thing. I'm always like, I have such a great network and I'm always asking people for help. Diana and I talk all the time, who's commenting on here, about things what we're working on and doing. Because there's no reason. Humans are social creatures. Like, we don't need to do things alone. We're not designed to be doing things alone. We need help. We need to collaborate.
Well, and when you don't, you very quickly fall into that tunnel vision, and that the shame police are always hovering right outside, right? And that's and I'm so more keenly aware of that than I ever was. And I thank Dr. Brown for bringing her work and the idea and concept of what shame really does to us and how it manifests in different ways. And it's fear and we allow that to ride to ride shotgun with us all the time. Instead of saying, I recognize it.
Yep.
And here's my plan. And does it feel scary? Yes. Mm-hmm. But I have a plan. And, fear is a natural protection, but it doesn't mean it's paralyzing. We can move through it, and getting comfortable with feeling uncomfortable is something that I coach people all the time to do. If it's easy, it's usually not worth it. The caveat to that is when you're working in your zone of genius, things can be easy for you that are not easy for others, like you said, right? Yeah. So communicating, being on camera, being on stage, performing is easy for me. It's how I was raised. It's part of my DNA. I'm not intimidated by that. Whereas put me in a sports situation and peace out, right? Like when all the rest of the kids were playing baseball and soccer and all those things, I was in voice training. I was in theater camp. So I have zero understanding of like athletic ability and what muscle group does this and that kind of stuff. So intimidated by it.
And you shared that openly and vulnerably recently as you were getting your treadmill and the things that you shared on social media, which I thought was courageous. Yeah.
But I'm not good at it.
Right.
But that's okay, right. It's okay. And I may never be good at it. And I look at you and you're like running around the lake in Orlando with your headphones and making a video while you're freaking running. And I'm like, first of all, I'd trip and fall. I wouldn't be able to breathe. I would be so disheveled. So I look at that as a gift you have. And yet you didn't think you had the athletic ability to try out for baseball. So it's so crazy, right? So having that outside perspective is really, really, really helpful for sure. So got some great comments coming in. Another thing you talk about in your book is your personal brand. And this is so, so important. And I end up having this conversation with folks in one way or another almost every day. Because a lot of people think about branding and they associate it with Nike or a company or like Disney, like these Coca-Cola, these huge brands, Amazon. And they're like, I'm not an entrepreneur. Why do I
Right.
need to worry about a brand? And I was
Yep.
like, okay, let's change the word from brand to reputation, because they're fairly interchangeable, right?
Synonymous. Yeah.
What are you known for? What do
Hmm.
you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? Or what do you want them to think about the work you do? And how do you want them to perceive you? And I think it's been so important to help hone in on that and get specific about what do you want your brand to be, and how do you then build that.
Hmm.
And for me, it's getting in touch with why I do what I do, why I love what I do, and what I can do long term that gives me energy, that makes me feel fulfilled, and doesn't just like suck the life out of me.
Hmm.
Because there are jobs we might be good at doing,
Yep.
but don't fulfill us in any way, right?
Right.
Like I could sit there and do XYZ, but is that what I want to do all day long? No. So
Right.
that's not something I'm going to build into my brand. I had someone I was coaching, and she wanted to move jobs, and she is in HR. And I was like, okay, what do you love about what you do and what don't you like? And she's like, oh, I hate recruiting. I don't want to do recruiting. It's like the least favorite thing I do, and all of the work I do, I really want to focus in on total rewards and these other things. Great, let me see your resume. Let's talk about it.
Hmm.
And we were on Zoom. I picked up the resume because I had printed it out, turned it around, and I'm like, can you tell me the first thing on your resume? It was recruiting. Like, but you don't want to do that, but you're leading with that.
Yeah.
So when we talk about brand, we have to understand what we're putting out there
Yeah.
is going to reflect back to us. So
Yeah.
kind of walk me through how you get people to hone in on their brand and then start
Yeah.
to evangelize that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just explained all of it. So,
No.
no, that's it. I mean, your brand is essentially your reputation. Our friend Orlando here put in, we all have a personal brand, whether we know it or not. By the way, Orlando, happy 50th birthday. I saw all your photos on Instagram this week with your family. Awesome stuff. And speaking of brand, I'm always following, watching what are the people putting out there. And, Orlando is a friend, so I want to see what he's up to. You mentioned it earlier. Your brand is your reputation. So this idea of brand, it started with companies, right? And you think about Nike and Apple and Coca-Cola probably have the strongest brands in the world, right? And it informs the reputation that those companies have and influences whether you buy their products or not, which is why companies are always working on that brand. Well, people have brands as well. As you mentioned, it's essentially your reputation. It's what people think and say about you, whether you're in the room or not. And we all have a brand, as Orlando said, we all have a reputation. So I think we might as well be intentional about building that brand, about building that reputation, instead of just leaving it up to chance. Now, being intentional does not mean that we are fake, right? Or we try to be anything that we're not, right? As I already mentioned, I'm a big fan of authenticity. I'm a proponent of that. And I don't want anybody to try to be fake. But I think we can be intentional in how we're showing up. And the biggest way we impact that brand is how we do show up. How do we interact with other people? How do we treat other people? How hard do we work? What type of projects do we take on at work? How do we collaborate with other people? And the way I think about it and the way it works for me is I'm always thinking in the back of my head, how is this going to impact my brand? How will this impact my reputation? When I walk into this room or virtual room, right, or into this conversation, how do I want to represent myself so that, people think of me in terms of the brand that I want to portray? And it starts with that question that you were getting to right there, which is, what do you want your brand to be? Right? Because maybe you've worked in a certain place, like you said, recruiting for a long time, but maybe you don't want your brand to necessarily be associated with that because you want to move into a different type of career, or maybe you want to be known for something else. Maybe you recruiting pays the bills, but you want to be known for the nonprofit charity work that you do, or just the fact that you are kind and compassionate and helpful to other people. It goes back to that reflection piece of understanding, like, what do you want to be known for, and then how are you going to show up that's in line with that? Because as I said earlier, and you were talking about it too, your brand, your reputation is what people think about you, say about you when you're not in the room. And guess what? When you are going up for a job or a promotion, and the hiring manager, like you've been in this situation, Barbie, like the recruiter, hiring manager, people are having a conversation, you're not going to be in the room, right? 99% of the time, you're not going to be in the room. They're going to be having a conversation. And this is especially true. You think about a lot of the internal moves that people make. Someone says, oh, Barbie applied for that job. And what's the next thing going to be that the hiring manager says when they're thinking about bringing you onto their project team or that role. Oh, you know what? I've worked with her before. She was really hard to get along with. I'm sure, she's very experienced, but I don't think I want her on my team. Or is it like, oh my gosh, Barbie is amazing. I loved working with her. Everything I hear about her is fantastic. Let's get her on this team. Or is it crickets? Like, I don't know who that is, right? So it could be any of those things. And you have the power to impact that with how you show up, how you interact with people, how you're building your network and going and talking to other people. And then the other element, of course, if you're looking at external stuff, is how you show up online on social media, right? You and I are active in creating content on a regular basis on LinkedIn and other social channels. You don't even have to be a regular content creator. You can be commenting on other people's posts, supporting other people in your network, and they're going to see you, right? And all of that informs and inspires, influences your reputation and essentially your personal brand. And so at the end of the day, like you said, it's your reputation, and you have an opportunity to be intentional with that brand or reputation. And I'm trying to be very intentional with mine every day. That's why I have like this poster on the wall behind me for all of the live videos that I do, someone asked earlier what the red poster on my wall was. So maybe they're looking on a small screen, but it's a cover. It's the cover of my book, right? It's the cover of my book, which I have behind me at all times. I have everywhere I go. I'm giving them out to people because I want my brand to be associated with that. I'm also always, I don't know how, maybe not 100%, but I go out of my way to try to be kind and generous and helpful to other people because I want my brand to be associated with that. I believe in karma, and the energy you put out into the world comes back to you, that sort of thing. So I'm always kind, respectful, helpful to the people around me. And I believe that becomes part of my brand. And I hear comments about that all the time, as well as I want my brand to be associated with energy. That when I come to a room, both physical or a virtual space like this, that I bring a lot of energy to that space, and people remember that, and that becomes part of my brand. So the question I would ask for people listening, right, and watching is, what is your brand? What is it now, and what do you want it to be, and what do you want to be known for? It's an interesting question to ask and to reflect on and think about, and then start being a little bit more intentional about as you show up in different situations.
I love that. And, I would add to that, because it is important. What do you want to be known for? And it's natural for us to immediately go to the tactical. Well, I want to be known for, having the best book, the best, if you're a printer, the best print quality, the best ink, the best paper, whatever it might be. But we have to go a little bit deeper than that to start. And I was sitting with a friend over the weekend who is a CEO of her company, and she's really looking to grow her brand and her presence specifically on LinkedIn, but perhaps other places as well. And so we were just chatting about, how do you do that? How do you start to identify yourself in the space, and then what you stand for? And we started to go through kind of her origin story. Why do you do what you do? Why did you start your company? And she happens to work in the insurance space. So she was talking about, well, because there's so much confusion about insurance and people don't really understand it, and I want to help them understand it. And I'm like, okay, but go deeper. Why did you start doing this in the first place? Did you just literally by mistake walk into a building and they said, hey, we're hiring people to work in insurance. Do you want to work here? Did you see, how did you get into this, and what inspired you? And she had been a waitress. She had done lots of other things before getting into this space. Come to find out, her husband had been permanently disabled as a result of an injury at work. And without having robust insurance products in place, they would have been financially ruined. They would not have been able to move forward without a reimbursement program, all the benefits that were in place to protect him and their family. And she was so impacted by that. It inspired her to want to help other people to have those same protections in place should they need it at a certain time. And I was like, that's your why. Your why is born of what you experienced. It's not about the tactical stuff of, Cigna's better than Humana, or this one is better than this one, right? Because everybody's selling the same products in the insurance space. Very few people are coming up with new types of insurance.
Right.
But why you do it, and then what you offer as a result, is what's going to differentiate you. And start talking about your why and like attracts like you said, right? The law of attraction. We believe that we manifest things. So put out there your story. And people are afraid to do that. Well, what if people don't like my story? Well, then they're not your people.
That's right.
And that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
You're never going to resonate with 100% of the people who hear your message.
Right.
If that's your goal, then you're going to fail miserably. You're never going to reach that goal, right? And we think about mega successful people in the world, Tony Robbins, Oprah, Medea, what's his name? Totally losing his name. Tyler Perry. Some of these huge moguls who have made billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
But they don't appeal to everyone. And you know what? They're okay with that.
Yeah.
Because they're true to themselves, and the people who are attracted to what they have to offer are their people. And so I think that's also something to understand when you are developing your brand, is that you don't need to be everything to everyone.
Right.
Because then you're nothing. Then there's nothing special about it. So be who you are, lean into that, and accept that it's okay that not everybody resonates with that. It's not a big deal. You'll still be very successful. Do you find that to also be true in your experience?
Oh yeah. I mean, when you put something out there like a book, right, or even a show like what you're doing, that you have an opportunity to help people. You know that if you put time into developing it, it's going to resonate with people. But there's probably going to be other people that it doesn't work for them, doesn't resonate with them, right? And the problem is, someone put a comment in earlier that so many people let fear hold them back, right? A lot of people let fear hold them back. It's the number one thing that prevents people from pursuing their goals or putting content out or publishing a book or whatever it is, right? And if I had let that fear prevent me from publishing my book, because there probably are a couple people out there that will hate it. And by the way, if you go to the book page on Amazon right now, I think I have over 240 5-star reviews. But I also have, I think, a couple 1-star reviews from people that are like, started reading this book, thought it was boring, couldn't finish it, like, see you later, whatever they said, like it was not for them, right? And that's going to happen, right? A lesson I learned in that too, funny enough, you can go to like the Harry Potter series on Amazon, you'll find 1-star reviews from people that are like, I hate this book. And it's like, okay, so somebody hated it. She still made billions of dollars, right? J.K. Rowling's from this series. So it's just not going to be for everybody. That's okay. But if I let that fear hold me back because of those 1 or 2 people, then I wouldn't be able to help and impact all those other people that have gotten value from my book. And I hear from people on a regular basis how much they appreciate my talks and the book and how it's inspired them. I got one yesterday, somebody who like completely overhauled his vision for his career and got a new opportunity and got a promotion, and all this stuff is happening for him. And he did the work, but he gave me credit for, sort of inspiring that action. I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't have the opportunity to do that and to build the brand that I'm building if I let fear hold me back because of the couple people that are going to be like, this doesn't work for me. Because that's going to happen, right? And you're going to repel the people that need to be repelled, and you're going to attract the people that need to be attracted. And you also have to think about, who are you building that brand for, right? If you want to be VP of finance one day and you want to stay in your company, like, what does the CFO care about in your organization, right? Is it analytical skills, or is it people? Is it relationship skills? Like, do you need to be known more for being analytical? Don't go like kissing up or whatever, right? But like, think about what part of your brand or what will get you to where you need to go. Because let's be honest, it's not going to be all about your experience or the projects you've worked on. It's going to be a lot about the brand that you've built, your reputation in the workplace, and what people think of you when you go up for that promotion.
Yes. And, that's such a great point. Another friend of mine who works in the D&I and HR space, he had been offered a job as a CHRO, huge salary. I mean, amazing role. And it was kind of out of the blue. And he was very excited. They offered him the role. He was cleared background, cleared. And then they called him and said, we're rescinding the offer. And he was like, what the hell is happening? And one of the board members, or maybe more than one, I don't know, felt as though his social media presence was too outside of the box for what they were comfortable with, because he was very outspoken in the D&I space about what he felt was okay and not. And I don't know that anything he said was inappropriate. I don't know.
Right.
But for that organization, for that board of directors, they felt as though his brand was too edgy or pushed people too far, maybe too preachy. I don't know. But whatever it was not aligned with what they wanted for the person in this role. And therefore, they pulled the offer. And as horrible an experience as that was for him, you know, it turned into a very long, meaningful conversation with us, because I said, well, you have to be aware of that. You have to know that what you put out there, you may not think people are paying attention, but they're paying attention. And most of the people who are paying attention and who are critical of it aren't saying anything, but they're watching. And so that whole point, circling back to the intentional piece, is so important. If you put something out there and you mean it and you stand behind it and it is a cornerstone of who you are, go for it. But understand that means that there are people who may not buy into that, or may say you're not for me, and just be prepared for that. So your online presence is basically a large resume.
Yeah.
You know,
people are watching.
It is. People are watching. And so, you know, I've seen several folks out there in the world lately, and they're going for jobs, or they're going for this, and they're not getting them, and they don't get it. And I'm like, maybe look at what you're putting out there. That can be a big part of it. And if you're okay with that, great. But just be aware that those things are happening. Maybe behind the scenes, but they are happening. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know we've talked about that. And like Orlando, who was on earlier, as a recruiter, if you talk to any recruiter out there, like, do you look at what people are putting out on LinkedIn and online? Of course,
you do.
Right? You want to see what they're all about. And it can work mostly in your favor, right? It's why I tell people, even if you're not trying to build some big brand and you don't like love the idea of posting or being all day on LinkedIn, like we are, even if you share an article once a week about what you're reading about and what you're learning about, it develops that brand that you are educating yourself, that you're curious, that you're into like developing thought leadership, that sort of thing. And I think that works in your favor long-term. And conversely, one more reason not to engage in that next political argument online, right? Because people are watching, right? And they see that. You never know who's going to be hiring for that job later. And they're like, oh yeah, I saw that thing that you posted 2 years ago. Sorry, not interested, right? It can happen.
True. It's true. And if you're a bandwagon person, just forget that too, because the tide always shifts. So what was rah and everybody was behind last year is going to change. But what you put out there is out there forever. So it's just always keep that kind of thing in mind, because it is important. And again, if it's your passion and you believe in it and you're willing to stand behind it, go for it. Just know that you are creating a brand. Like Orlando said, we all have one, whether you recognize it or not. And it's the same thing I say about culture. When I go into an organization and help them with culture transformation or talent acquisition culture transformation, and they'll say, well, we don't really have a culture. It's not defined. I'm like, you have a culture. It is there. Perhaps you haven't defined it, but it's there. And how do we know? Let's go ask people. What does it feel like to work here? How do you describe your organization? Because culture is the emotional manifestation of every interaction, every conversation, every email, every meeting, right? So it exists. It just might not exist in the way you would like it to exist. So your brand is the same way. It exists. Orlando is spot on.
There's a question here related to that from Carla Looper. As I grow as a CEO and being very intentional, what is your best advice? Something you might be more suited to give. But one thing I was thinking already is seek feedback, right? Because what I've learned from working with executives, the more senior you go, the less feedback you get, because people are intimidated, right? To talk to you and share things that they're thinking or feeling. And if you don't get that feedback, you don't know what people are thinking or feeling, or what the culture looks like, or how people like working on the team, and how you might be able to improve. So it's just one of the things that came to mind for me. Obviously don't know the whole situation, but I think that's something that we can all benefit from. It's hard sometimes, but seeking out the feedback and seeing what people are thinking and feeling. And that's, I ask for feedback from all of my clients, and it's hard sometimes, but that's how we get better for next time.
It is. And feedback can sting. It really can.
Yeah.
So you want to surround yourself with people. If I called Andy after the show and said, what did you think? And he said, well, it was good, but you really, you missed this, or you confused the audience because you kept going over here. I would know that you said that with love because you
Yeah.
want to help me get better, not because you were being a jerk and being critical. So,
Yeah.
and not because you feel competitive. I think that's what we have to understand is that we have
Right.
the people we take advice from need to be people who care about us getting better,
Yeah.
not about it being a competition
Right.
or anything else. So understanding their motives is huge.
Yeah, that reminds me. There was another question in the feed from Alexander DeBrose who asked, "How do you know if your career goals are realistic?" It was a little higher earlier up, and I was just thinking, you've got this big career goal. I think it is useful and important. I posted about this the other day to get feedback from other people around you. Right, talk to your good friends, your colleagues, your manager if you're comfortable. Say, hey, this is what I'm thinking I want to achieve in my career one day, or in 5, 10, whatever it is. Like, what do you think, and how can I get there? And you can get some feedback on, like, oh yeah, you could definitely do that. Here's a good way to get there. You might also hear people say, I wouldn't waste time on that, right? There's no way you're going to do that.
Yeah.
And then you get to decide if you listen to them or not, because you also have to remember, while feedback can be useful, that you are living your life for you. And a lot of times people will shoot down your dreams and goals because they don't want to see you fail, or they don't want to see you succeed, right? They have their own motives. And so you have to take that in consideration. And there are some things that are, they're pretty unrealistic, right? Like I mentioned, my dream as a child was to be a professional baseball player. Today, I'm still pretty athletic. I'm 41 years old. I'm still pretty athletic, but there's pretty much zero chance if I decided to shut it all down now to try to go become a professional baseball player. It is unrealistic. I would expect you, Barbie, to say, like, come on, dude, there's no way that's going to happen. You're already older than every player in the league. However, there might be other things that I want to do that seem like a stretch, but they are possible. So don't let somebody stop you if that's what you really want to try, because you can give it a shot. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. You can go try something else.
Yeah. You just made me think of something. I watched that new movie, the new Will Smith movie, King Richard, last night. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's the story of Venus and Serena Williams and their dad, Richard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
amazing story.
He wrote a plan for Venus and Serena
before they were born.
Before they were born.
I know the story's crazy.
Holy cow. I didn't know the story. And at first I was like, is this just the movie?
Yeah.
And then I looked it up and I was like, wow, wow. But when you think, I mean, all the things we've been talking about, make a plan, stick to the plan, adjust when necessary, because he had to do that, right? They moved out of Compton. They had to go to where the expert training was.
Yeah, they moved to Florida.
All of those things, like he did that, and the girls obviously did it because they're
the best players in the world. Yeah.
Time. So they had to have some talent in there, but he somehow, I so believe in the power of manifesting your life. And if there's never been a more perfect example than what he was able to do with the lives for his family and his children. And that there were 3 other girls in that family, also all of whom are very successful and in their own right. So,
that's amazing. There was another story like that in the Atomic. I don't know if you read Atomic Habits, a really good book that's been really popular. And he told a story about the man, I think it was like earliest 20th century in Eastern Europe, can't remember, who decided that he wanted to do something like that. And he found a woman who would marry him and go along with his plan to raise master chess players. And he had 3 daughters, and he just surrounded them with chess, like at all points of their life. That's all that was in the house, was like chessboards everywhere. And it's all they talked about. And they all grew up to be like grandmasters dominating the field of chess. Just incredible story.
It really is. It really, really is amazing. So we're very powerful. Our minds and our souls and our thoughts are very powerful. And if we just tap into that, we can do some really amazing things, as you have in writing this book, right? That's amazing to me. I love it. I love it. So we are right at an hour. Andy, I know you and I could talk about this for hours.
More hours, yeah.
I know. If anybody else has some last minute questions you want to throw in there or comments, please do so really quickly. We're going to wrap up. Andy, so let me ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. Other than your own book, what book have you given away more than any other book?
The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. It's a book of 366 daily meditations based on Stoic philosophy from
Oh, shoot. You froze. Okay. Well, hopefully Andy will be back. It sounds like The Daily Stoic was his most given away book. So, there you
I'm
are.
back.
There you're
I'm
back.
back.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, Daily Stoic, it's like my Bible, and I've given it away probably more than any other book to people.
Okay. Chocolate or vanilla?
Ooh, well, I like them both. We'll go with chocolate.
Chocolate. Okay. Beach or mountains?
Oh man, that's another tough choice. I think I am more of a mountain man. I've spent a lot of time in the mountains and I miss it. It's kind of funny. I live in Florida, so I now spend more time at the beach, but I would probably choose mountains if I have to choose.
Okay. Dog or cat?
Again, I love them both, but I've got a dog right now. I'll stay loyal to that. He's a pretty good dog.
Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't say that either because we have 3 cats and 2 dogs. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much. Andy, if people want to reach you, what website do you want them to go to?
Yeah, well, we're on LinkedIn, right? You can connect with me there, of course. And I have some bonus resources if you want to grab some free resources for my book on my website, ownyourcareerownyourlife.com/bonus. It's the 5 steps to owning your career. It's the top 5 most common career mistakes on there. I've got my morning routine in there. And the 3, we didn't talk that much about mindset and challenges, but the 3 questions to ask anytime you face a big challenge, just go to ownyourcareerownyourlife.com, click on bonuses. There's a podcast there. I've started a new community for people who want to take their career and life to the next level. And all that information is on that page.
Awesome, guys. If you're not following Andy, please click the follow button, click the bell. He puts out amazing content. I'm an avid follower. Whenever I see Andy's stuff out there, I'm always sure to read it. Join us next week when we have Paula Fulgham joining us. Paula has her own HR consultancy firm and a really amazing employee benefit program I've never heard of, but it allows employees to earn points toward travel and vacation as part of their reward of being an employee. So really excited. Yeah, I'm excited to hear about how that works. And so thank you, everyone. Thank you again to our sponsors and partners over at Daily Pay. Thank you all for joining us. What a great interactive audience. You know, it's my favorite thing is to have you guys interacting with us. And so thank you. Thank you, Diana. Love having you here. Everybody, Michelle, Sam, Carla, Xander, Yvonne, all of you, Dana, thank you so much. Wonderful day. And stay tuned for next week. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.